So it was really I'm so enjoying Katri's presentation, and some of the issues that I am presenting in my presentation are overlapping, but let's see. I think this makes a very nice picture all in all when we have these two presentations. So my topic today is learning from the market, turning observations and experiments into decisions and actions. And my name is Anette Kairikko, and I work as a research group leader for entrepreneurship and value creation here at Turku University of Applied Sciences. And really pleasure to be here today. So my background is so that I've been over 25 years in different roles, working for large companies, for small companies. Then I joined the academia again 2010. I've been working as a lecturer and also as a researcher, and my special interest has been in startups, and I did my PhD about the early internationalization of startups in the accelerator context. So this topic is very close to my heart, which we are speaking here today. All right, so some questions that really matter when we are trying to learn from the market, and I think many of these were already tackled in Katri's excellent presentation. So obviously, we all know that we really need to learn from the market from very early on. We need to gather those customer insights. There's no point of developing something in a vacuum and not to take into account the customer's viewpoints. And when we move on in that process, we are doing the tests and pilots and experiments, and that is actually the actual topic of today. And I'm going to give you some ideas and guidelines how to run it successfully. Reading recommendation. There are two books that I highly recommend you to get familiar with, Talking to Humans and Testing with Humans. And those are both downloadable for free. So that's actually quite nice. And the Talking to Humans book is more focusing on the early customer discovery stage, where we are gathering those necessary insights from the market, and the Testing with Humans is more in this experimenting, piloting stage. Very good books and very hands-on, very practical tips that they are giving. And many of the points that I'm raising up in this presentation are actually coming from these two books. So this picture is just highlighting that that we need to know the customers, and we need to be sure that we understand the customers. We cannot do the development in a vacuum, so we need to leave the room, so to say, and go to the field and be in touch with actual target groups. I suppose that during this training and this project that you're having, you've been going through the double diamond model for several times. So starting with that discovery stage where you are really trying to identify what is the problem. So it's very human that we move on to the part where we are trying to make the solution, but we shouldn't be. As we all know, we should be focusing on the discovery stage, identifying the problem, and I think that you've been in that area already for quite some time. And now we are speaking today about this delivery stage where you are testing, and you should be doing those small scale tests. Like Katri said, it's important to move on, go forward. So it's not about finding the right answers necessarily, but finding an answer which is helping you to move to the next stage. And why prototyping, why testing? Obviously, we want to make better decisions, and we want to do testing with human beings. So we shouldn't be just amongst ourselves or being relying on some data which is not based on the actual customer experiences. it's important that we are not creating too complex tests. So we should ask ourselves, what is the simplest thing I can do to test my thinking? So try to be as simple as possible, because we shouldn't be wasting too much time at this stage. And really to share your ideas. We learn every time we share the idea, every time we get feedback, we learn from the market. And on the pic, you have an example of a paper prototype. So instead of starting to code or do something complex, just highlighting how a digital version would be functioning, but just as a paper prototype, and that was an example, a learning game for doctors. What is also very important, and that came very clearly in Katri's speech as well, is to set priorities. So there are plenty of questions that one might have, and it's really important that we are asking this question: that who is this for? What is the problem or need that we are solving? How will we solve it? How will we acquire and retain our customers? How will we create value for our company, whether it's monetary, non-monetary, and how could this go wrong? So this is the risk assessment. And when we are asking these questions, we have to prioritize. We cannot test everything. So we really need to identify those matters that have highest impact and also the highest uncertainty, and focus on testing those. All right, so about the experiments. A good experiment is structured, it's focused, so referring to the earlier slide, so we are not trying to test everything at the same time. It's believable, so the data that we are getting is helping us to move forward, even though it's not necessarily the final stage, but it's helping us to move to the next stage. They're also flexible, that we learn, we iterate, we learn from the market, and we are also able to flexibly change our hypothesis as we move on. And they are also compact. And vice versa, or the other side, if they are too long, if they are too complex, and if they are too product-centric, that can be a problem. So when we are testing, we shouldn't be just testing our product, but we should be testing the whole business model. And later I will also have a little bit more information about that. So the experiment archetypes, what kind of experiments we can run? Very simply, we can have a landing page experiment where we are just, for example, testing the price level. So do people react on our offer at different price levels? And there needs to be a certain call to action so that we can really measure whether it is attracting interest and triggering some action. Then, of course, different advertising and promotional material helps us to see whether there is interest amongst our potential customers. Pre-selling, for example, crowdfunding. Let's say I would like to publish a book, and I would just have a campaign. Are people willing to pay for my book? So before starting to do anything, I will gather that information. Paper testing was already shown in that earlier example with the doctor's game, that we see, we show our customers how it would potentially function, and we learn how they are reacting upon our paper prototype. Running pilots is already doing that with the actual product, with the real customers, and then usability, so that the customers are also using the product for some time, and we get some insights how it's going and working. As we move along this level of effort line, as you can see on this slide, so it gets more complicated, more time consuming, it requires more effort. But on the other hand, of course, having a live product and business pilot means that we are also having much more insights, much more the level of information, or the quality of the information is better. So in comparison to just run an interview, which is very simple, like Kadri said, people are usually saying, well, your product is wonderful, I love it. But are they actually really interested in buying it? That's a different question, and therefore you have to, so to say, think about where you land with your pilots on this scale. So do you really wish to do a live product and business pilots? Then a template when you are planning, being structured and planning well ahead was something that we highlighted on the earlier slides. So what are the questions that you should be raising? So what is the hypothesis, or what are the hypotheses that we want to prove or disprove? So it's really important that we also keep in mind that we need to somehow have some quantifiable results indicators that are telling us whether the pilot was successful or not. When I was doing my research with startups, and this topic was very much very relevant part of the research. Many said that, well, actually, they learned through the pilots that they didn't clearly enough identify that whether the pilot was successful or not. So they had huge amount of data, but they couldn't say whether the pilot was successful or not. So that seems very, very simple and actually quite self-evident that one should do it. But it's really important that ahead you are setting those measures, that whether you are being successful or not, because otherwise you might also interpret the data later on in a different way. So there is this human tendency to see what we want to see instead of seeing the true facts. And then, of course, very practical matters. Who are the target participants? How can you reach those participants, and how many do you need of them? And how are you running the experiment in practice? And that's what requires the planning and contacts and also the access to the market and to the real customers, because it's not always that easy. Let's say you have an edtech solution and you want to test it with school children in the primary school. So of course you have to have access to those schools, and you cannot just go there and start experimenting. So it requires a lot of prior arrangements, and sometimes there's also a need for systematic agreements, for example, especially when we are speaking about this public-private collaboration. And how long does the experiment run? And then, of course, are there some qualitative things to learn during this experiment? Also referring to this Talking to Humans book, which is giving fantastic examples of how to learn from the market. Then the risk dashboards. This is an example from the book I mentioned, and it is showing that there was such a service. There was a magazine, Cooking Light, and they wanted to start a new service to have a subscription service for customers to have new revenues, and it was about sharing recipes for healthy food, so meals, ideas for the customers, that how could they cook, and they ran some experiments, and this dashboard is giving that you see the green and red dots, and they are also in different light green or darker green and dark and light red, showing that what was the response from the market, and then those which were gray, if the experiments hadn't started yet. So this is a quite visual way of showing that, and also systematically tracking that's how your pilots and experiments are going, and of course, in order to do so, it's important that you define what you are measuring, like has been said already plenty of times during this presentation, and also during Kadri's presentation. And after the experiment, there are several ways to move on. So you may figure out that you need more data to make key decisions. You may decide or be able to say that, well, we are ready to move forward. It can be also that you are changing your hypothesis that you learn. So that's why it's so important that you don't waste time and plan too much. On one hand, you need to plan, but don't plan too much because it can be that very soon you are discovering that, well, actually the initial hypothesis was wrong. So we need to change that. And then, of course, you have to be also able to kill your babies, which is very difficult for many entrepreneurs because there's a lot of passion, a lot of emotion with your ideas and with the work you've put to your project. But sometimes it's better to decide to kill the initiative entirely instead of using much more time to continue with it. So testing the product versus testing the business. This was also very nicely already in Kadri's presentation through her experiences, but just to emphasize that that quite often we need to think about the whole business model, and here are some questions related to customers and related to competition, related to understanding who is the earliest adopter of my product potentially, and also the financial part, and also these risks which were mentioned earlier as well. So these are some of the assumptions, and I really think it's also worth, for example, thinking about this. Why can't my customers solve this today? So is it because the service doesn't exist, or is it that actually they don't need that service? The service isn't solving anything which is a problem in the first place. Business model canvas, you're all familiar with that. A great tool, a dynamic tool with which you can really iterate your business model constantly, and you should be. It's very important to remember that whenever you change a single item in your business model canvas, it is changing like the whole dynamic. So then you have to really come back to this over and over again, and you should be using this as a tool while you are doing your pilots for your business model. And then finally, conclusions. So some tips for successful experiments. So it's important that you are really identifying that what is having impact for the success or failure of your business, and don't just focus on the products, and stretch your thinking. So use your imagination. So there are many ways to test. Don't just take the first idea that comes to your mind, how to test. Be disciplined about the details, and set these pass and fail goals so that you are able to really say afterwards whether you were successful or not. We are tempted to really interpret the situation differently if we haven't said that clearly enough. And ask yourself that how can you just learn as much as you can, but using just half of the resources. We all know that the resources are scarce, and we don't have them too much. So optimize for learning, not just for building products. And if you have a very big experiment, it might be a good idea to do a smaller trial first, and then move on to how to improve, and try to be quite quick. So don't consider too long, and remember that qualitative aspect, talking to people, and then be aware of your own biases. We all have them. That's clear, and then also try to so to say, build in some sort of a systemacy that you have, for example, weekly meetings when you are checking what is the progress. Because if you don't build that systemacy, you might be just, there are too many details and too much going on. You're all over the place, and it's very difficult to keep that structured progress. All right, so waiting for perfect is never as smart as making progress. This is where I'm finishing my presentation. So it has been really a pleasure to be here today. And if there is a question or two, I think we might have a minute or two to go through those. So thank you so much for your attention, and wishing you good luck with your pilots.